Kyle Erickson here. It's been 1 year since I got my PlayStation 5. Well, a few weeks short of that, but we're rounding up. I got the PS5 on launch, which was November 12th of last year. And I think I was pretty lucky to nab one of these things, as they've been extremely difficult to get a hold of. The PlayStation 5 was announced in 2019, and at that time there was some info leaking out about these. And I was like, oh cool, maybe I'll pick one of these up at some point after they're released, but what I and probably everyone else did not foresee was a pandemic and a global chip shortage. So when pre-order came up for these, I knew that I had to try and get one because I felt like these could be pretty hard to pick up. I did what probably a lot of other people did. I sat on my computer hitting that refresh button on my browser, and minutes before this was actually supposed to go on sale, the site that I was trying to buy through crashed from all the traffic, which in hindsight was probably pretty lucky for me. I ended up setting up a browser extension that refreshed the page every few seconds, and when something changes on the site, it would make this alert noise. So a few hours later, I was just nodding off to go to bed for the night when I hear the sound pop up the website, and I was able to place an order. The model I ended up getting was the Digital Edition, which is fine for me for the most part. I know you can't go into the store and find your deals on used games or specific sales, but I find that the PlayStation Store does have sales on a lot of the time that aren't too much different than in-store, but in any case, I just took what I could get. And in an age where we're all kind of spending more time inside, it's been really nice to be able to take a break from everything that's going on and immersing yourself in something outside the real world for a little while. When I first unboxed this and set it up, I thought that the console was enormous. I had a hard time initially placing this somewhere around my TV, especially with the cables that Sony provides. The HDMI cable is really short, so if you've got a wall mount TV like I do, with all your cables ran through the wall, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to need a longer cable. The design also threw me off a little bit at first. I really like minimalistic product design, and although the PS5 isn't overly complex or anything, it's quite a departure from the last few PlayStation generations, so I think such a wildly different design takes a little bit of getting used to. I do like it a lot more now, but that being said, I still find it sticks out a little bit placing it in a regular household space like a living room or a bedroom. One thing that I have noticed over the course of a year is how much quieter that this has been over my PlayStation 4. When I would start up my PS4, the fans would spin up, and 10 minutes later it sounded like it was ready for takeoff. The PS5, on the other hand, has been pretty much silent, and I haven't really noticed it at all. I know that some people have said that they find the hardware in the PS5 isn't as big of a jump from the previous generation as it has been in the past, say from a PS3 to a PS4 or in earlier generations, but I do notice it quite a bit. Not just in graphics, which have been improved quite a bit with ray tracing and higher frame rates and better resolution, but the whole experience is just a lot better. Load times are noticeably faster. It's been great not having to wait forever at load screens, and most of that is to do with the PS5 having an internal SSD. The drive inside is 825 gigabytes with just under 700 gigabytes that's usable, which after a year has come to bite me a time or two. This really isn't all that big of a drive considering the size of some of the games that we see now. And it can fill up pretty quickly depending on your library size. I've learned to keep the number of games installed on my system to a few at a time, but it's definitely not ideal. Luckily, there does seem to be some pretty cool internal drives on the way specifically for the PlayStation 5 to add a little bit more space, and that actually might be a little bit faster than the stock PS5 drives. You can use external drives with the PS5, but there are some caveats that go along with that. You can store games on the external drive, but unfortunately you can only play PS4 games off of it. I know there are a lot of people that are upset by that, but I do wonder if maybe the experience just isn't good enough to try and run games off of an external drive. It would likely be noticeably slower than the internal SSD, especially where the supported USB connection tops out at a max of 10 gigabits per second, which is roughly a quarter of the speed of the internal SSD. And speaking of PS4 games, I think for me, the biggest strength this console has had up to this point has been support for PS4 games. After a new console launch, I think it's fair to expect pretty limited releases initially, at least for the first few years, especially exclusive titles. So having support for backwards compatibility has been great. I know there has been backwards compatibility in the past with previous generations, but I found it never really worked as well as just playing the game on the native console. The opposite has actually been true on the PS5. It's going to support probably every game in your library, and in most cases load times are way faster, and you're going to often get a bump in frame rates as well. I know for me, I went back quite often to some of those old PS4 titles, and have never had any issues with playability, and the experience has been just as good or better. It's been great because I don't have to leave out a PS4 setup alongside my PS5. A lot of the PS4 titles that I've been playing over the last year or so have also got upgrades to PS5 versions, which has also been awesome. The most recent in my library being Ghosts of Tsushima. I was actually playing the PS4 version when they released the Director's Cut and the PS5 upgrade, and that's really when I see the most noticeable differences when making that jump from a PS4 game or a PS4 version up to the PS5 version. As I said before, sure, graphically things do look better, but it's all the other things that really improve the experience. If you've played this game on PS4, you'd likely notice the load times immediately, but also, aside from that, the thing that I notice the most when switching from PS4 titles to PS5 that always blows me away is the controller. The feedback on the DualSense controller is really something that we've never seen before. The adaptive triggers in-game when you're using weapons or even in sports games do make the experience a lot more immersive. You can definitely notice the tension change depending on what you're doing, and the haptic feedback and controller vibration is infinitely better than on the DualShock on the PS4. Moving your character around can give off subtle left and right vibrations that make you feel the movement a little bit more, and a lot of games have done a really good job implementing the internal speaker, which also increases that immersive experience. The controller is also a little bit bigger, so for me it feels a lot better in my hands, and it's definitely a lot more comfortable. That being said, with all those bells and whistles in the controller, it does come at a little bit of a cost. I've noticed the battery doesn't last very long, especially if you're using a game that utilizes all of those features. Games that use those features sparingly have seemed to prolong the battery life, but in any case, it's not great. You will probably have to charge this more frequently than you're used to on a DualShock controller. I've also had some other issues with the software. When putting the console into rest mode, I find that it does occasionally throw errors. Luckily, it's at least semi-infrequent. I know a lot of people that have had more issues with this, and it seems like when it does happen, it takes forever to start up, and it is a little bit annoying. So hopefully they can sort that out in future updates, and it's not something that we're constantly plagued by. The rest of the software side of things has been really good. I have suffered from occasional crashes, but not any more frequent than any other console that I've owned. And that's often to do more with the game itself than the operating system. The dashboard was a little bit disorienting at first moving from the PS4 to the PS5, but I've gotten used to it now, and there are definitely some little things in here that I've ended up liking quite a bit. Pressing the PlayStation button in-game brings up a little menu overlay where you can turn your machine off. Where on the PS4, you would have to long press that button. And I kind of like the PS5 way a little bit more. I do like the rounded UI quite a bit now, especially over the PlayStation 4 dashboard. And there has been some other improvements over the PlayStation 4, like recording gameplay in 60 frames per second, where the PlayStation 4 could only record in 1080p. And as a whole, I think I've been really impressed with the PlayStation after a year. I know there have been a few things that haven't been great, but those things have been relatively minor. The experience for me has been overwhelmingly positive, and as we start to see some more exclusive titles here in the new year, like Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, I think I'll be even more happy with things. Let me know if you picked up a console recently in the comments below, and what you like or dislike about it. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more tech related content, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.